So my name is Michael Schultz. Pleasure to meet you all. Thanks for coming. I hope you had a good keynote yesterday, a good first day one. Still boggles my mind that they're putting in German here on the second day, monotonous presentation style. So good way to kick off the presentation. I really like the fact that MongoDB is doing more of these sort of industry business talks. I mean, I've only worked for tech companies and product companies, but I think it's really important to understand what the technology can really do, what the business impact is, and how we're driving value and business value for these companies. I spend most of my time in retail, in commerce, working on digital transformation. So this topic is really near and dear to my heart, especially as we're talking about B2b and B2c and different business models and different use cases and scenarios. So let's kick it off. I think if we're really talking about digital transformations, I think this is where it all started. I think in the 80s, we did the first digital business-to-business transaction online. 19s, it got a little bit more mainstream, and we're probably looking at a desktop and very, very likely an Oracle database that either held the product catalog or sort of the actual transaction data. Fast forward to now, we're probably looking at this, where we have social media, we have TikTok, over 1 billion people on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We have a digital acceleration that was driven by COVID that really catapulted kind of like the digital transformation years forward. We have monkeys and fancy Adidas suits that are going for millions and billions in NFTs, right? We have retailers and other companies and industries thinking about accepting crypto, working in the metaverse with the likes of Nike, launching their own metaverse and sort of reaching customers there. I think it's important where all of this is coming from and where all of this is going. And the way we got here, I think I want to take you through kind of like a bit of a history of what that looked like and what the commerce platforms were that got us from where we were to where we are now. So we're looking at the likes of Hybris and ATG. Hybris later acquired by SAP, ATG being acquired by Oracle, Demandware being acquired by Salesforce. So you see these massive software companies acquiring these vendors to serve their commerce sort of scenarios. But what you see here is they did all of that in the late 90s, early 2000s. A different way of looking at that is actually this. Before 2010, there were no new architecture patterns that we are familiar with today. And the question is really, if you want to drive experiences like metaverse, like crypto, like any sort of engaging experiences in an omni-channel type world, how do you serve them and how do you create those customer experiences with the modern commerce technology stack? I mean, if you're going back, you're really looking at this, where all of these companies have a tech stack that is probably 15, 20, 25 years old, and none of these sort of technologies were even considered. Because going back to the first image, they're probably serving the desktop only. In 2007, we built out, or the iPhone came out, right? So we were looking at not only desktop, but mobile, social, those kind of things. And we're talking about going from a single channel to multi-channel and then to omni-channel, so all these fancy buzzwords there. But if you look on the right side of the spectrum, and the AWS graph is just for reference, but you see that no other sort of commerce platform was built on that side of the spectrum. And one thing that I'm actually hoping is that there's going to be more competition in that space because it's going to move and catapult forward the entire industry. Everyone who's sort of on the left-hand side is no longer supported, like ATG. Hybris is on a big decline, and everyone is trying to be headless, which is the decoupling of front end and back end. And the only ones that could probably make it over to the right side are the likes of Shopify, because the way that they're architected with their hydrogen offering, there's a lot to be gained there. But I'm hoping that there's more of these smaller companies that either start out in a niche or start out pretty broad that help the small and medium-sized businesses. And again, if you go back to this slide, you see BigCommerce and Shopify and Magento are mostly focused on the small and medium-sized markets. So again, still all before 2010, but none of them were built in mind for a world of Bored Ape Yacht Club, NFTs, metaverses, shoppable Instagram, TikToks, and things of that, where all the millennials, the Gen Zs, and everything are there and consuming. A different way of looking at that, and I know the slide is pretty loaded, but you see kind of like the monolithic applications, kind of like the all-in-ones, the black boxes on the left-hand side, where everything is literally one tech stack, one black box, likely hosted on an on-premise type environment. And if you make a change to the catalog, to the front end, you have to deploy the entire stack. So lots of limitations, lots of dependencies that you have to figure out. As you go further along, you see how the front end is being split off. So you have the first kind of like content-led experiences that are really sort of custom front ends. You're going to this notion of headless, which again is the decoupling of front end and back end. And on the right-hand side, you're almost going into the next step of the evolution, which is more of a composable commerce stack where everything goes, everything is flexible, everything is expandable, everything is replaceable. But again, very, very few vendors that actually follow that approach, despite the benefits, despite the flexibilities. And everything since then has changed since these monolithic applications have initially been created, right? The economic opportunity has gotten larger. Everybody's moving to the cloud. Again, we're looking at not only single channel where you're focusing on desktop experience, a point of sale, or maybe a mobile phone, but severe omni-channel capabilities. So, I mean, who would have thought the QR code made a comeback 2 years ago? Who would have thought like curbside pickup is like a thing, right? So all these omni-channel capabilities now need to be supported, and there need to be brand experiences that are articulated through that. And the question really is, do you have the modern commerce stack that supports that sort of evolution? And again, also the last point here, 50% are really focusing on microservices, APIs, and that has really become a best practice there. And this is where we come in, because we want to not only change the way that commerce technology is consumed, built, or delivered. We want to build these products, not only for growing and sort of innovative companies, but for all sizes, all business models, whether it's B2B, B2c, direct-to-consumer marketplaces. And we want to build these outstanding, scalable customer experiences. And we do that, interestingly enough, in the same way that the likes of Amazon, Walmart, Alibaba are doing it, but at a fraction of the cost. Because we have this notion of nobody should be building their own discount or order API or customer API. All of those are commodities without the negative connotation, because doing that at scale is still a skill and it's still magic to do so. But since our inception, we were looking at how can we create these experiences beyond the desktop? So again, omni-channel in mind and all the emerging technologies that are coming out following that. And I think this is what the end state looks like. So composable commerce, again, is the sheer notion of everything is replaceable, even the commerce platform. So if you want to start out and just building out a product catalog or your product information management system, you can go for that and just use those APIs. If you're a company that serves not only one but multiple business models, including marketplaces, you can probably put this together, but you're not going to get this from a legacy vendor because, again, they were focused on one thing only. And they were probably also focused not only on one channel, but also on one business model only. Again, just sort of stating the facts here, but if you look at Salesforce, for the B2C side, they have Demandware. For the B2B side, they have Cloud Craze. Different tech stacks, differently integrated, different offerings, even different pricing. So the question is, if you are a B2B company that wants to go direct to consumer, what do you do? How do you do it? And the sort of reading in between the lines of this talk track here is, we don't actually care whether it's B2B, B2C. Yes, there are specific use cases. Yes, there's things like approvals, workflows, company-specific pricing, customer-specific pricing, all of those extra use cases. But an order API is still the same. A discount is still the same. A promotion is still the same. So there are fundamentally core functions and features that are available. And this is where we're also pushing the boundaries, right? On the left-hand side, you're looking at the platform. And this is, again, where MongoDB helps us quite a bit to scale out. Because if you're thinking of the platform or even the suites, you either have one single database on the left-hand side with the platform, or you have multiple databases, but that could be different databases because most of these suites have grown by acquisition. So you have the likes of Adobe buying Magento, SAP buying Hybris, Oracle buying ATG, and not only those core commerce platforms, but also personalization engines, social listening engines, things of that nature. All of them are different tech stacks, differently built, differently implemented, differently integrated. And so only on the right-hand side where everything is really loosely coupled, and you have multiple databases, this is where we can trust on MongoDB, and more specifically MongoDB Atlas, to scale this out across all of our customers. And I think it's something that the likes of Twilio and Stripe have done, right? Twilio, if you're thinking about a communications platform, whether it's a text message, whether it's an email, whether it's email marketing, you can do all of that with APIs. We want to do and achieve the same in the commerce space, which has never been done before. And so really digging in and double-clicking into that relationship with MongoDB is this whole notion of math. And I think at 1:30, there's another talk by John Williams who is talking about kind of like what math means, demystifying all of that. So I encourage you to go to that if that sort of interests you. But the notion of that is really everything is microservices, exposed by APIs, 100% cloud native. So we're really taking advantage of AWS, GCP, and all the cloud infrastructures. It's not just like another workload that sits on GCP. And then again, headless, the notion of headless. And again, this is kind of like what our tech stack looks like, and it's really a differentiator for us looking at all the sort of legacy monolithic platforms here. And I think there's definitely the notion of business user tooling and building out your own UI, which a lot of companies and our customers are doing. All the investments that each retailer or telco company has done in terms of like enabling their engineers, their developers, you can still take advantage of that, where if you're looking at some of the legacy vendors, they have proprietary software development languages. That means a very scarce pool of talent and resources. Those are probably very expensive and not that accessible. We have all these SDKs that we can provide here very, very easily. And then again, if you look at that persistence layer, it's really key that MongoDB sits there, which helps us to scale. At the moment, we're looking at an Elasticsearch. We're serving both B2b and B2c. Elasticsearch for B2b is pretty decent because in a B2B scenario, you just want to find. It's very easy. You're probably doing repeat purchases, etc. In a B2C scenario, you want to discover. You want to have things served to you. So that's, I think, where announcements like yesterday in the keynote around MongoDB Search and facets is kind of cool, because that just opens up the level that we were trying to get to anyway. So that's very, very exciting to us. And again, different way of looking at the same thing. You have the channels on the left and more kind of like the old school back office massive systems on the right-hand side, and we can easily integrate in and out of these. But what is true for all of our products, not just the commerce platform, is that MongoDB Atlas sits underneath all of that, allowing us to scale, allowing us to scale out and serve our customers there. A different way of looking at that, and also a differentiator is here for us, is we're 100% headless, meaning there is no front end that we're providing. You either build it yourself or you're buying it in terms of like a framework or templates or storefronts. But we allow 100% of our APIs to be exposed to any channel, any sort of scenario, any business model. And then underneath, again, all the data sits in MongoDB, which is accessible via those APIs. Whereas some of these legacy vendors, you're looking at only a few APIs being exposed, meaning maybe only order API, maybe only the catalog. And you have different levels of access to the black box, that is the commerce platform, and the data itself. So very, very tricky to use that, especially if you want to add, with like COVID, you want to do curbside pickup, right? Like how do you add that additional channel without having access to these APIs, to these payment methods, to these checkout methods? How are you sponsoring and enabling your internal like in-store sales force? You can't. The data model, the flexibility of our data model is amazing, because you can model effectively all these different business models. And the fact that, again, MongoDB sits under the hood, it allows us not to only be able to customize our data model in real time, but also make the respective changes in our database and have that available across the entire stack. If we're looking at extensions and integrations, the way that we're consuming and communicating with the different systems is also second to none, because we're looking and leveraging all those Google, AWS, and Azure kind of like services and pub/sub queues and what have you, really to subscribe to these events. And again, back to that earlier sort of graph, eventing wasn't even available for some of these legacy players, and they're sitting on that 20-year-old tech stack. So if you want to drive these modern commerce experiences, that's one way of leveraging that. Same with injecting serverless functions, so really taking advantage of that as well. The real where the rubber really hits the road is sort of why we chose MongoDB and why we chose MongoDB Atlas specifically. The first top left bottom bucket there is really iterate quickly. What we're trying to do is two things here. Number one is we can iterate more quickly in terms of how we're building out products and solutions and applications. But as a result, we're also allowing our customers to do the same. So if you want to add a new channel or you acquired a new brand and you want to launch a new storefront in Asia, you can do that very, very quickly. Unlimited scale, same thing with the fully managed offering that we're taking advantage of. We think it's more important to have our developers focus on innovating on the product, on the platform, than having them maintain the platform. Like, we really want to focus on what's really differentiating for us. And then MongoDB can take care of all the failovers and the database and redundancies and things of that nature. Again, we're fully cloud native, whether it's GCP, AWS, you name it. But we also want to run anywhere, and our customers are everywhere. I mean, we have customers like Lego, Lululemon that sell into all these different regions and markets. We want to be able to serve them without any latency or any sort of issues there. And then building better apps. I mean, similar to the iterate quickly idea, but we just want to make sure that we can go to market quickly and our customers can do the same. And maybe talking about some of these customers is really, we're more than just retail. We have food and grocery, which is obviously the closest to retail. We have a lot of fashion industry references that we can take advantage of. Just in the last, I think, 5 months, we signed H&M, LL Bean, Lululemon, Sephora, Primark, British Telecom, so really, really amazing names that are really helping us. And again, it's not just about retail. As a German company, of course, we need to fulfill all the obligations to our car manufacturers. Don't ask me about the breweries and everything, but we definitely support a lot of the German car manufacturers. We're talking to the likes of Volvo and Nissan, luxury premium. So it's not, I think, I'm hoping what is coming across is we're not really differentiating between B2B and B2C, despite the fact that the talk track or the session calls out for this. Because for us, whether it's B2B, B2C, a marketplace, still the same for us. Yes, there are specific use cases, and yes, there's different ways on how you arrange the customer journey. But whether it's B2B, B2C, marketplaces, whether it's mid-market, small, enterprise, whether it's different industries, at the end of the day, we're serving a customer. There's a digital transaction. There's payment being taken. So not a lot has changed. It's just the way of how it's composed. That's really the notion here. And just picking out a few, LL Bean, the key here is really, again, omni-channel. It was very, very important for them. They are very much a brick and mortar type retailer, really, really focused on the physical space, but how can we mix and match the digital world and the physical world? And that's not really anything new. I mean, we've talked about omni-channel 10 years ago, right? But the fact that there are still large companies that are struggling with that and solving for that is kind of key here. And really enhancing that in-store experience, mixing that, buying online, returning in store, and all the complexities that just come with now, like supply chain issues and things of that nature. Lego, one of our first and biggest customers, the previous platform that they were on, they were dying at 7 orders per second. Now we're doing multiple, like thousands, 10,000s a second. We don't even have the notion anymore of it's August and we're planning for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's really, we trust in the cloud infrastructure. We trust in auto-scaling aspects. And again, we do this across. Like, you don't have to be a retailer. You can do subscriptions in a telco environment. Whatever you buy from our product portfolio, all of the same like notions and guidelines and value propositions apply here. Another one is Alta. I mean, they have a product catalog of 25,000 products. We're serving B2B companies that have 1 billion SKUs in the product catalog. And that's just like, if you think about a SKU, it's really the product type, the variants of that type. There's so many permutations of that, and we can support that. And the beauty of it is, again, coming to that distinction between B2B and B2C. For us, it's not even a different platform. It is the same platform. Everything that we're building for B2C will probably be available and like usable for B2B and the same way around. Because like if we're doing a quote is typically something that you would probably do in a B2B type scenario. but you can probably do quotes if you're looking at a B2B to C or direct to consumer kind of like scenario. And so that functionality can be reused. It's really around how do you leverage that functionality. And again, to the earlier example, it's one platform, it's one integration. It's not like figuring out I have these platforms, I did these kind of like platform configurations because of acquisitions. I think it's very important to know that given it is one platform, it's very, very powerful to support all the different business models. Like if you wanted to do a marketplace approach, you could probably serve 80% just using commerce tools in that aspect. Yeah, so that's Ulta. Lululemon, amazing brand obviously for us. Again, based on Oracle ATG, which is a no longer supported platform. So we have probably done about 30 migrations from like the likes of Lululemon and Size in terms of brand over to commerce tools, really helping them. Again, omnichannel, a big aspect here. You can see the results bullet point there. It's really around digital and physical sales channels. How can you use one platform there? And I think the key takeaways that I hope you take away from this slide is really the notion of reconsidering B2b and B2c. Like, what does that mean? We have about 35% of our customers are B2B, but in some way, shape, or form, they all behave like a B2C type customer. It's very customer specific. Reconsidering the notion of build versus buy. A few years ago, it was all about, do I build this custom or do I buy something off the shelf? Here, you can mix and match. It's almost like a build and buy. You could literally buy a product information management system, but you say you don't want to use the checkout from us or you want to use the order API from us. And that's really a nice offering here. Also reconsidering the notion business versus IT. Yes, we're still talking to CTOs and sometimes business owners and merchandising managers separately, but what we're seeing is that organizations are actually productizing their teams. And what that means is we see customers that have 20 people just focusing on checkout, 5 people on promotions, 10 people on discounts. So it's almost like a productization of the overall organization. And then again, considering the notion of SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. At the end of the day, we're solving the same problems all over the place. It's all about increasing conversion. It's all about making more money. So the features and the functionality that we're providing is applicable to all the different market segments. So I wanted to leave you with that. Hopefully that sort of inspired you. Again, at 1:30, John Williams from Amplience is doing another session on Mach, if you're interested in that. But hopefully that gave you some sort of food for thought. Any questions? Yes.
You talk about the reasons why you standardized on Mongo Atlas. What were you using before? What did you switch from? And think about the core platform you built on before, and when did you switch? And what were you
I think we switched about, I want to say, 2 or 3 years ago. And we were usually just working with the usual suspects. So we're doing a lot with Oracle, of course. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions?
Several slides back, you mentioned that LL Bean went ahead and committed to yourself in light of their previous vendor, and you mentioned who the vendor was. I'm not concerned with that, but what was your competitive advantage that they didn't move?
I think they were on HCL Commerce. The notion was really that HCL Commerce was one of those sort of dying commerce platforms. I mean, HCL Commerce is really what IBM WebSphere used to be. So it's been kind of like a handed down commerce platform that was very sort of poorly supported. And what they wanted to do with us is really trying out a few things. So they actually started three weeks after they signed a contract just using a couple of APIs. They started with a card API, order API. And depending on which platform you're on, you have a few hard decisions to make, like how do I get started? One of those is like if you're on like a Shopify, a BigCommerce, a Salesforce, those are all SaaS-based offerings, right? So as soon as you stop paying, they're switching it off and you don't own anything because it's like leasing a car. Whereas our approach, or with like an Oracle ATG and HCL Commerce, even an SAP, you can start chipping away at the big monolith and sort of say, you know what, I want to start with checkout. I want to start with a cart. I want to build my product catalog out better. So the advantage was they could do all that with us because they could start small and they could try and fail if they really failed. But it allowed them to go to market really, really quickly and sort of migrate everything over, while a lot of the other infrastructure that they had in common was still intact. And at some point, you're just switching over, right? You're just pointing your product catalog in a different checkout. But yeah, that's really what they wanted to do. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Awesome, cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.